has been a hot minute now since Rinascita came out. Yes, we're about to head into 2.1 even. 2.0 has been, I think personally, one of the best patches in gacha gaming. Okay, one of the best patches in gacha gaming. And we have someone here, Saurusness, who is asking the question, does Rinascita fix Wuwa's issues? Ooh, implying Wuwa had some issues that needed to be fixed in the first place. A returning player's perspective. So, let's get into it. Does Rinascita fix Wuwa's issues?
Does Wuthering Waves version 2 live up to the hype? I feel like I have a different perspective on it than most of the takes I've seen. I played Wuwa from day one and loved it.
Already, that doesn't fill me with good hope. Because most people, I'll be real, 90% of people who I have, heard play Wuwa 2.0 have said that it's been a great patch. So when someone says I have a different perspective, oh no. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of my 1.3 take. Yeah, I think I was one of like 3 people in the whole world that didn't like 1.3. Yeah, I feel like we're going to see something interesting here.
But while I kept playing for the first 6 months, over time I enjoyed it less and less and ended up taking a break for a few weeks after the release of version 1.4. When version 2 dropped a month later, I was tempted to try it again, but was a bit too preoccupied with figuring out why I was so disappointed by the final act of Natlan to give it any attention. But some friends who still played kept saying it was a fantastic update and a huge step up which really deserved a second chance. And
actually, I was just thinking about it. I really liked 1.4. Yeah, I really liked 1.4. I think I actually really enjoyed the events, like the Dreamlink stuff, the elusive realm that they had. I had some of the most fun actually in the 1.4 update, even though there wasn't even a main story stuff, which is interesting.
And many people online were raving about it. So over a week after the update dropped, it was time for me to discover Rinascita. While I enjoyed Wuwa from day one, right from the start there were some aspects which I felt ambivalent about. I shared my first impressions a few weeks after it was first released, but overall it felt like a pretty solid start despite the technical hiccups. Soul 3 didn't quite capture—
Oh my god, don't please. I'm gonna make a whole thing about like the history of Wuwa from like start to now. Oh my god, the launch of this game was rough. The launch of this game was just hella rough, bro. It was just hella rough. It was just not it.
To my imagination as much as I'd hoped, and the story quests were a big disappointment despite some great ideas and very polished animations, but the core of the game for me was the combat, and I found it very satisfying to play. Over time, however, many parts of the game which I had initially enjoyed lost their shine, and the game slowly turned into a chore, which eventually led to me dropping it. Let's talk through each key aspect of the game: exploration, combat, progression systems, endgame, characters, and story, and see how my take on each changed over time, and find out which parts version 2 has improved. First, the most important part of an open world game for me, exploration. Wuwa immediately stood out due to—
Okay. If we don't say the exploration is improved exponentially, something is gonna be wrong, right? Something's gonna be wrong. Because already traversal was pretty nice in Wuwa to begin with. But now it's just like next level. It's the thing that Wuwa does best. It is. It's the thing Wuwa does best right now, so let's be.
To the ease of traversal, most notably the characters being able to sprint straight up walls.
Yep.
For many, this was a huge selling point, but for me, it's emblematic of why I had mixed feelings about the game. On one hand, after spending countless hours exploring open worlds which either make climbing difficult via slow animations and restrictive stamina gauges, or worse, restrict traversal to specific paths marked with yellow paint, it felt incredibly freeing to sprint straight up a mountain and reach the top in no time.
Positive.
While there is a stamina system for climbing, so much of the traversal seemed designed to be as convenient as possible, and it was a breeze to run around the world collecting things and hunting echoes. But, on the other hand, this stripped the exploration of much of its gameplay loop. In other games, while I do hate it when they
strip the exploration of the gameplay loop?
have a stamina gauge outside of combat for anything other than climbing, I've actually enjoyed stamina-focused climbing to varying degrees. It can be a fun challenge to gauge whether you have enough stamina to reach the next safe spot, or to make trade-offs between climbing speed and stamina consumption, and it can be a big contributor to making the world feel like a large and hostile place. Some of the best exploration gameplay can be summed up as the player versus the world. I played an indie game called Jusant, which took this to the extreme.
You know what? Can I give a hot take? I 100% understand what she's trying to say and what she's communicating, okay? When you have a world, okay? When you have a world where you could just basically climb up everything freely and it doesn't matter, suddenly you have like trivialized the actual like setup of the world around you, and things mean less. You don't have to spend as much time standing in a place, looking around, looking at your environment, because you just breeze past it all. So I understand what she's trying to say, right? There are a lot of games where if you don't have climbing mechanics, for example, right, Infinity Nikki is a game where they don't even have climbing. Same thing with like Arknight's Enfield. You don't have a climbing system. It forces you to actually look at the environment around you and take a bit more of like a, let's say, a platformer approach to the game, right? To a platform approach to the game. So, oh, I need to get from A to B. What do I need to do around me to get to that point position? And that's part of the gameplay loop. So that's entirely what she's saying. So I understand and I sympathize with that. So I could understand. But I think the difference with Wuwa is that you don't have those mechanics. Well, not mechanic. You don't have that gameplay loop built into the game like that. You don't, like, yes, there are puzzles you can do in the open world, right? There are puzzles you can do in the open world, but there's nothing that requires you to be like, oh, put this thing in this slot and suddenly this will change the environment in this way. Now you can reach this new location. That's not how this game is played. That's not how, they've never done that in this game. So it's not really something to, like, expect. It's just, like, an open space. And you can argue that's why some people feel the open world feels a bit trivial and pointless, aka me. I don't actually like exploring in Genshin or Wuwa as much as I would want to, because I feel like I'm just like pointlessly running around, going to a location, opening a chest and getting the fuck out of there. I think Rinascita is the only time where I've like really kind of felt, okay, I feel encouraged to explore a bit more, right, in a gacha. But most of the time, especially like from 1.0 Wuwa, same thing with Genshin mostly, it's like everything feels a bit like trivial. And what's really the point? I don't feel satisfied exploring in the world itself. So I do understand her perspective here. Okay, I do understand. But also, Wuwa was never built. The exploration was never built with that kind of gameplay in mind. I don't think personally.
And focused entirely on in-depth stamina mechanics supplemented.
Like just making climbing up a mountain more difficult with stamina is not good thrilling platforming gameplay. That's not good platforming gameplay. No one wants that. That would not make Wuwa good. Like we're all in agreement that would be bad.
By strategic use of various climbing tools as you slowly make your way up a gigantic cliff face for hours on end. That level of detail made for a fantastic experience where the climbing itself was an engaging challenge, but this would be difficult to integrate into a truly open world.
Imagine not going on a date with Lorelei. I'd argue the Lorelei date isn't part of like an exploration mechanic. That's something you find in the world itself, right? Well, she criticizes Genshin quite a lot too. Like most of recent Genshin has been calling it out. Well, that's good. At least she's not like biased. That's good.
It's not something I had expected.
Sorry, Lorelei is like an event. It's not like a specific like exploration thing.
From a game like Wuwa, of course, though I feel like there's a decent argument that a major reason that climbing stamina gameplay gets so frustrating so quickly for so many people is that almost all games which have it fail to add any form of player progress to that system other than increasing the size of the stamina bar. Either way, the real point is that there's a wide spectrum here. At one extreme, you have games where there is no gameplay other than traversal mechanics, while at the other extreme, the traversal is intended to be as frictionless as possible. Many people feel that friction is inherently a bad thing, but that's just not always true. Wuwa leans towards free.
Like, I really don't think she's wrong in what she's saying at all.
rather than friction, and that is also not inherently a bad thing. What matters is how it affects the gameplay. WoW's freedom of traversal absolutely shines when contrasted to other, more restrictive games, but it quickly fades into the background once you start playing regularly. For many people, the end result is that they get to skip the parts of running around the world that they found painful and go straight to the thing they want to do: play quests, solve puzzles, and fight enemies.
Let's be honest, once you've unlocked teleports and waypoints and everything else, all you do is teleport and then run to the location. Once you've done exploring, that's it, right? You explore for the chests or the collectibles. You are not running around for the sake of running around, right? It's not like fucking Spider-Man, right? The game where you will buy play just for fun. You will teleport and then run to the thing you need to do, and then that's it.
Appreciate that freedom, but in the long run, it makes me feel like I'm skipping across the surface of the world, almost like I was never really there. I've yet to find an open world game which gets the climbing the mountain part right in a way which keeps feeling fun over time, but the way WoW removes that friction,
I just don't think you're going to, and I don't think that's important enough to these games. I don't think that, oh, how much fun can I have climbing Mount Firmament is a thing. I think that's way more like a single player game that you will play once, right? To me, that feels like a game you will play once and not a gacha where you're meant to like come back day after day. Yeah, I feel that if it was a single play game, I would agree. Apart from that, no.
Doesn't work for me either, since a large part of the appeal for open world
okay,
games
in Rinascita, yeah. I'm talking about 1.0, but in Rinascita, yes. Just flying for fun. Sometimes I'll be talking to someone on Discord and I'm just fucking around in Rinascita. Sure, totally.
Feeling of exploring a new world, my feeling after playing for a few months was that it was a little too far towards the end of the spectrum to keep me entertained. Mount Firmament did capture my attention more than the rest of the map, however. Its aesthetic was much more striking, and some of the exploration mechanics it introduced were much better balanced for my tastes. The same theme echoes when it comes to the loot mapper. Open world games are at their best when they use subtle visual cues to subconsciously guide the player towards any interesting things for them to discover, chests included. In other games, I regularly reach 100% map completion before I even realized it, without using anything like a loot mapper or a treasure compass to mop up any missing content. WoW's world always felt fairly mixed on this to me, and it's tough to express why. I'm curious whether the loot mapper is to blame. When a game includes a mechanic which marks every single nearby chest on a map, it no longer matters whether only a tiny percent of people will organically find any given chest, because there's an easy way to guarantee all players will find them if they want to. Sadly,
I think this also has some truth to it, right? I think this also has some truth to it. Like finding chests. I think it's just an excuse to have an open world. That's probably my hottest take when it comes to why I don't really care that much for open worldness in a gacha, because it feels like chests feel like an excuse for the world a lot of the time. Oh, we have this area here, so we can put a chest in it. It's like, okay, once we've opened the chest, we'll never go to that area again, really. Unless it's like some kind of like side quest that ends up being there, right? But like, the way chests are integrated into these games just feels like a bit of an excuse. But I understand why the loot mapper is like is helpful. I just thought it was helpful.
Using the loot mapper takes away that feeling of discovery for me and reduces exploration gameplay to just
I don't think anyone gives a fuck. I don't think everyone gives a fuck. I'll be honest. I think by the time people use loot mapper, they probably at the point where they just want to like finish up their exploration, right? By the time you use loot mapper, you're at the point where, all right, I just want to 100% this and get it over with. I just want to get it over with. Like, you can't, yeah, exactly. You can't immediately use it. I think it comes at a point where people are like kind of done with it.
Mechanically working through a checkbox exercise, since it felt like I was given a choice.
Again, it's speeding up the process that people find the most troublesome. Like, if you don't like collecting all your chests, but you want to get your exploration up, hey, you've got loot mapper to speed up your process so you don't have to fret about the things that you don't like. A gacha is all about convenience, right? Gacha games are always about making things easy for you to do, because they want you to keep coming back every day. So they want your experience to be easy and not have to worry about it. So they will implement things like this.
choice between missing out on much of the chest and missing out on any sense of enjoyment, I ended up just not bothering at all. In Rinascita, the loot mapper itself has been significantly nerfed. Random chests are less common, and instead there are more activities in the world to have fun with. Technically, there's an even more comprehensive menu which provides a literal list of checkboxes to tick if you want to max out your exploration, but the intuitive exploration was so much better in the new regions that I never felt the need to use it. That, hopefully, points towards a much better balance. The experience of exploring is greatly improved, but you still have that exhaustive guide available if you want to clean up the last few things in each area. I do have mixed feelings about the lack of chests in the open world, and the plague of mimics all over the place just rubs.
No, I don't care. I don't want more chests. You can use your sensor. I'm pretty sure you can use your sensor to detect whether or not it's a mimic or not. That seems like a bit of a skill issue on her part. Just, if you see one of these, censor it real quick. Okay, we're good. All right, well, we can open it. You know what I mean? I don't want more chests. I think it's fine.
In that so much of the world is pretty empty, but overall I've had a good time.
I agree. Like I said, I feel like a lot of the world is just an excuse to put a chest. I don't like that. I wish the open worlds and gachas were had a bit more depth to them. Do you know what I mean? It's like how in The Witcher, right? You can, like, if I'm playing Witcher 3, you could end up going into a cave, fighting a beast, and then find up some kind of lore that then takes you on this wild goose chase quest to get really cool, like materials and shit. Do you know what I mean? Like I want more of that in these games. I know it's there here and there, but I want more of that kind of content spread throughout the world. It would make it better. But again, that's way more of a single player, not live service game thing.
Which leads us to the most eye-catching addition in Rinascita, flight. Given that the level of freedom we had in version 1 ended up eroding my enjoyment of its exploration, you can see why I was apprehensive at the addition of even more freedom. Flying in particular is tough for open world games. It's the kind of thing that makes even the biggest games feel small, and it can make exploration feel inconsequential. Fortunately, Wuthering absolutely nailed it. After spending the previous weeks flying around Natlan using Chaska, my first—
Hell yeah! Because Rinascita is built for flying. It's like when World of Warcraft introduced like flying mounts for the first time. The devs were really worried that people wouldn't be exploring the world anymore. And guess what? You're goddamn right! You are goddamn right! People just started flying and teleport. Bro, you could— yes, absolutely. We don't want to walk around the same ground a million times over when we could just fly to the place that we actually care about. You're goddamn right. But in Rinascita, they make it look pretty and beautiful, and the whole world is built around you being able to fly. It's good.
First few moments with Wuba's flight mechanic were just utter confusion. Physics? Momentum? Stamina? It was very different to what I was accustomed to, and yet it took only a few seconds to get the hang of it and only a minute or two to be truly impressed. Once you launch into the air, there is of course a fantastic sense of speed, and you quickly start trading altitude for even more momentum. If you're going fast enough, you can tilt back and regain that altitude, resulting in an undulating flight path much like the flight of smaller birds. You can also boost your speed at the cost of consuming more stamina. The controls quickly felt very natural, like this was how flight should work in a game like this. And then, for me, it settled into that perfect balance where the sort of gameplay loop of managing altitude and flight stamina didn't require any conscious thought, but provided just enough friction that flying around the world felt engaging. Moments spent speeding through obstacles at the bottom of the arc can be utterly exhilarating, and yet others spent at the top of the arc have a relaxing sense of calm.
I don't know anybody who has said we were flying is bad. Yeah, I can't think of a single person who would say that flying is bad in Mua. I think we could all agree that it's pretty good. We're just flying around. Yeah, it's fun.
Shocked if this ever gets old. Now, I just wish we could fly the same way in Jinsho as well. While taking flight really grabs the attention, the other aspect of Rinascita's—
the problem is with Jinzhou, everything is more like one level. You know what I mean? Apart from maybe like the northern parts of the map, everything's more one level, so you won't get that sense of grandness and scale, right? Like the different altitude heights in Rinascita is huge in comparison to Jinzhou. Like, yeah. I feel like flying won't feel as satisfying, but it'll still be hella useful. Just because it's nice.
Map and exploration do deserve—
Hey, don't want you're a rat, you to EOS immediately. That's a joke.
focus. Much of the new area is fantastic. The cities are actually well populated, there are a ton of different things to do all over the place, some of the puzzles are so much fun, and much of the content which can technically be considered exploration gameplay, since it counts towards your map exploration, is a bunch of different types of combat. WUWA is definitely playing into its strengths here. Aesthetically, the new area feels very different to the old, and it has many of those wow moments which had been oddly missing for me in the first region. The only thing which feels a little off is that there's something about it which feels oddly disjointed, with regions which don't quite feel like they belong next to their neighbors, though this feeling could just be an inevitable consequence of being able to zoom.
That's me whenever I play, wait, what's the... In World of Warcraft, like the Burning Crusade region, it's escaped the Outlands. At 1 minute you could be in like Hellfire Peninsula, and in the next minute you're like, was it the Greedy Forest? The begins with a Z, whatever the fuck it is. Oh my god, I'm exposing how much of a fucking idiot I am. You all know what I mean. It feels like that. Like in WoW, you go from one location, you cross a border to the next, and suddenly it's a completely different zone. Kind of feels like that. Outlands, yeah. You could 1 minute, Zangarmarsh, that's it. 1 minute you're in Hellfire Peninsula, then the next second you're in the mushroom blue Zangarmarsh. You're in the mushroom blue Zangarmarsh. You know what I mean? Or like you could be a Shadowmoon Valley. You could cross it. You could fly real quick, and suddenly you're back in Hellfire Peninsula. Do you know what I mean? Like it's such a different environment. So I'm kind of used to that. Hey, it is what it is. It's how these games work.
From place to place so quickly now that we can fly. And special mention to this exploration quest off towards the edge of the map where, after you awaken a boss enemy and start to chase it, it starts destroying the surroundings, smashing its way through bridges and launching boulders and enemies through the air. That was very cool on so many levels, and I'd love to see more like that. When placed next to the older regions, Rinascita's aesthetic may be a little jarring, and while on the whole the exploration still isn't perfect, it is an absolutely huge improvement. Next,
my only critique about Rinascita as a city is I feel like... Oh, okay, I'm gonna sound like a real nitpick. But, like, there are some parts of the city that don't make sense. Like, if you were to map it out like a real city. Not that that matters. Not that that matters that much, but, like, it did kind of jar me, like, how some of the things are laid out. That doesn't really make, like, a lot of sense. But it looks pretty, so what does it matter? You know what I mean?
Combat system. Much like the exploration, this is another area where WUWA stands out, a reason many people absolutely love the game, yet I have mixed feelings about it. When the game first launched, I loved it.
Oh, talk about combat. Oh god. As you guys know, I am now a TOA veteran. I have the best combat takes in Wuthering Waves, hands down.
The emphasis on skill and timing in combat can sometimes introduce a lot of problems, but WUWA's dodging system is absolutely fantastic, and the parrying can also be—
True, but sometimes the dodges don't register, or my parries don't register. And it makes me go, what are we doing here? But no, it's really good. The sounds, the way things slow. Bro, the dodging is great in this game.
Be pretty great. The early days of learning how it works and getting comfortable with it were a lot of fun. However, once I reached the point where the only remaining challenge was the endgame, my experience with the combat kinda diverged from what the most vocal people say about it. In this kind of game, I see combat complexity as having multiple dimensions, and WUWA's combat leans heavily into only one, mechanical complexity. It has a heavy focus on skill, timing, and learning the moveset of both your characters and your enemies. I found this very fun in the moment at first, as the challenge of getting to grips with the characters and enemies can be quite engaging, and found the dodging mechanic particularly intuitive and satisfying. However, I only enjoy this type of complexity up to a certain point. High-level play is a more challenging incarnation of the same principles. Getting good is all about memorizing the movesets of enemies so that you can really nail the timing of counters and parries, which then let you make the most of the most powerful combos and rotations of your characters.
Not wrong.
Since each character has unique animations, the delay between pressing a button and the hit frames is slightly different, so anytime you have a different character on field, you need to completely adjust your approach if you want to successfully parry.
I don't think you need to completely adjust your approach. And I don't think it's that much. Yeah, not a skill issue indeed. No, I feel like this is just kind of like a, I don't want to say this whole thing is a skill issue problem, but I think for every character, the dodge works the same for every character, right? Like, you don't have to dodge differently if you play Shang Liao versus, like, a Jian, right? You just dodge. Right? Yeah, exactly. Just dodge. That's what I mean. Like, it's, the dodge is the same for every character. You know what I mean? Like, yes, maybe if you're playing, like, a gun character, you can't, like, dodge counter the same. Or parry in the same way. But, like, all characters dodge the exact same. Parry timing is the only thing that's different. That's what I mean. Parry timing is the only thing that's different, but everyone can dodge the same.
Also, some characters can't parry at all, or only parry with, for example, their third or fourth attack. Combine that with the speed and variety of movesets.
That's why Gion's the GOAT, and you could always parry with his skill. And if you have him at, like, what, E2? Or is it E3? I can't remember, S2, S3, whatever it is. Where you get two like, the lances. Damn, you can always have one handy to parry whenever you want. It's nice. That's why Gion's the GOAT.
The more difficult bosses make, and you kinda need to build up muscle memory separately for each character you want to use. For many, this is the depth they want to see in combat. It makes each character feel different. It means there's a very high skill ceiling, and it rewards dedication and in-depth knowledge. I enjoyed it when I was in my honeymoon period with Wuwa, but it turns out that in the long run, I just do not find the grind of repeating the same battle over and over engaging at all. I hear that for people who enjoy this, when they do manage to really nail a fight against a difficult enemy, it feels incredibly satisfying. For me, when that happens, instead of an adrenaline rush, I always just think, was that it? And feel like it wasn't worth the time. And unfortunately,
I mean, she could have her opinion, right? I totally understand where she's coming from. I totally understand, because I've had some similar thoughts before, right? Especially when it comes to TOA. It's like, damn, all that effort, I don't know if that was really worth it when I could just get better echoes and suddenly my skill doesn't matter as much, right? I spent all that time trying to sweat it out, do double intro rotations, when, like, I could just pull better echoes. I don't have to worry about that. Is it truly that satisfying? Do you know what I mean? So I kind of understand that a little bit. But at the end of the day, this is all just a personal thing. So it is what it is.
the game doesn't make it easy for someone who doesn't inherently love that type of challenge to get into it. For example, when fighting the tactical holograms, I might have been able to enjoy the process of learning their mechanics in depth if it wasn't for the fact that every time you fail, you need to go through the effort of regaining your energy for all your characters.
Oh no, she's so right! No, she's so right! I think everybody has this complaint when it comes to fucking holograms. The fact if you die, your energy leaves. It's so annoying. Either make us start with 0 energy or give us full energy at the beginning of hologram fights. Like, you heal us. That's it. I don't care. Just pick one. Just pick one. Either no energy or give us the energy. But don't take it away. Either let everyone start at 0. We have to build it back up. Or let us start with 100%. Or if we die, at least then just don't wipe it. I do what I mean. Just something. Just something. Just every time we reset, make it choose something. Holy, it's so annoying. It actually just makes it frustrating. It makes it, like, it makes those deaths when, like, you're about to hit your roll, but then you suddenly die. It's like, oh, especially when you play Gion, right? And maybe you don't have good energy regen, and you need your ult. Oh my god, you're so looking forward to your ult, and you're like, oh my god, you've fallen the last hurdle. It's like, it's the worst feeling. It's so bad.
If you want them,
they don't take away. You just lose energy or death. That's taking it away. No, that is literally them taking it. It takes away your energy. That mechanic, death, that you lose it, that is taking it away in my eyes.
Available from the start of the next fight. If they had refilled the energy...
Maybe I might be the only one who doesn't mind because the time, it doesn't matter. You could take your sweet time. Nah, it matters. It's the way that it feels. Because suddenly you have to take longer. Like, no. I think a lot of people who play for, like, time... Because, like, once you beat holograms, right? What's the point in continuing to do it? It's to get a better time or to try out other teams, right? So I feel like you will have wildly different times depending on not if you died the one prior. Can you get your ult up quicker? It will change your time. And I think that's annoying for people who like to time trial stuff. Because that's what some people get their enjoyment from doing that, right? I think it's annoying for those people. Point is, you could, yes, you can, but this is dumb and retarded that we'd have to do that. Because suddenly you make one mistake and now you just wasted however many minutes of your time. It's dumb.
It might have just tipped into something I'd have gotten hooked on. Instead, it was just too frustrating. It's important to emphasize that this focus is the entire reason the game appeals to some people. I'm not saying the design decisions here are bad in any objective sense, just trying to share why they don't work as well for me. The emphasis on this type of complexity—
I'm telling you, keeping your energy upon death when it comes to holograms, everybody would enjoy that change. Everybody would like that change, all of us.
slowly wore away at my enjoyment of the combat over time, though more on that when we get to the endgame section a little later on. Another dimension of complexity is character builds. Despite the amount of time and effort this eats up, I personally don't think of it as something that WoW really leans into in any kind of satisfying way. Character and forte talent levels are linear, weapons are gacha, echo stats are endless RNG, and there's surprisingly little flexibility when it comes to echo sets. None of this gives players much control. At best, we can pick a weapon and an echo set and then grind.
True, but it's also like, best in slots will always exist, unfortunately. Like, this comes down to like a calculations thing. There will always be a best in slot, and when that's the case, there's not really much point in going for like one set over another, unless you're some kind of like support character. And it's like, do you want to make them more supporty or more like DPS? At the end of the day, really, you just want to support your main DPSs in this game, right? This is all like what gives you the best numbers, and when it's only really, this is the path of least resistance. When there's only one outcome that's good for you, everyone's gonna do it, right? That makes the most sense. Why would you pick a set that's worse? You wouldn't, so you don't. And I think the game designers also know that, right? So they're not gonna make a bunch of like useless sets, because if one is clearly better than others, what's the point in making a lot of them? Especially when the bosses don't call for it either, right? So I feel this is just like a gacha thing.
Grind for the stats we want, but the end result is a net negative for me. Build complexity is at its best when you have a host of different options, providing lots of control over how the build fits together, plus tangible effects on the gameplay, which creates opportunities for creativity.
Also, it's kind of fucking pointless having 3 cost and 1 cost echoes with like abilities. It's dumb.
Innovation in how players approach the game. In WoW, from what I can tell, there's usually only one ideal build for each character, and the equipment system just
I'm pretty sure I said this, right? I'm pretty sure, unless like it supports, you can have maybe 1 or 2. I'm pretty sure, right?
boils down to a grind towards that singular goal. People love the lack of 50-50 for weapons, but in this game, the free weapons are so trash that if you want any semblance of the power level you'd expect, you're basically required to spend your astrites on the weapon banner, especially for DPS characters. Ignoring that one gripe about the weapons, the one positive thing I have to say about builds overall is that characters are generally strong enough, even with mediocre builds, as long as you're skilled enough. So the really
True! You could have, what, like a level 50 Verena? You could have a level 1 Wanwu? Yo, I got a level 1 Yang Yang and Baizhu, or whatever the fuck it is. Hey, listen. That's pretty good. A lot of the time, you only need either like your outros or like your liberations for a lot of the supports. Right? For a lot of your support, that's all you need. Put the fallacy echo one, gets that damage boost, you know what I mean? Like, building characters in this game is very easy. Building characters in this game, in this gacha, are so good. It's not like Honkai Star Rail, where you need to level and upgrade every single member of your team. Every single member, because they're all going to be taking damage, they're all going to be doing all these things. Nah. In WoW, your supports can be level 1. It's great. It's great.
Painful parts of the equipment system can largely be skipped. Gear systems in gacha games are generally pretty awful, and I wish the developers would innovate and find some way to hook players on that treadmill of randomized incremental gains, which is not pure pain to interact with.
Give me echo discarding in the main echo screen and not through the backpack, thank you.
One innovation we were brought here is that you can farm echoes in the open world, but in practice it's even more of a grind to endlessly trek across the map to hunt them, especially because you still need to spend wave plates in order to get the EXP and tuners to actually level them and reveal their substats. If anything, looking at the world and seeing a near endless supply of potential echoes to farm just makes the whole endeavor feel even more futile to me. I could not dislike echoes more. I'd honestly love to hear from people who actually enjoy it, since at this point I legitimately cannot see any redeeming qualities. My personal favorite dimension from similar combat games is team complexity, and sadly it's one which I felt is a little—
Wait, why didn't she like echoes? Well, I guess she said why, but like that was a very damning last statement. That was a very damning last statement. I think echoes need a lot of work. I agree. The whole system could be improved massively in a lot of different ways. Yeah, I get it. I get it. Hard disagree on that point. I don't know. I do think echoes. The whole system is. It feels like it's. We see the vision. Just the execution isn't quite there, because we do feel the XP drought. I feel the UI issues. I feel the issues where it comes to the echo skills of 3 costs and 1 costs. You know what I mean? I love its concept, but we don't really utilize echoes as a whole as much as we probably could either, right? As a thing and a concept. Farm the XP tubes? Yeah. But the system is cool and it's way better than Relic system. I mean, we've already established that the one thing that the Relic systems like in Hoyo games have over Wuwa, right, is that you're able to see the first, like, what, 3-4 substats of the fucking Relic before you, like, level them. That's, like, a huge thing. That is a huge deal. And we already discussed having to +5, +10 every single, like, rollable echo just to see if it's worth continuing with. It is a massive waste. Like, there is a lot of there's a lot of issues like that, like, functional ones with the echoes that just, like, aren't nice. Just aren't nice.
Little neglected in Wuwa. It exists in the interaction between the combat system, the characters' kits, and how they fit together like a jigsaw puzzle. I love getting a clear understanding of how multiple characters work and figuring out unusual ways to make them complement each other to create teams which are more powerful than you'd expect. This was the type of complexity I was hoping for after reaching the endgame content, since it's the kind of
roll of crit damage 12 to 20 is too large and painful when you low roll. Yeah, low roll, bro. It's like I got a god roll on my Jinsei, but the crit rolls were so low. It's like, fuck, we can't re-roll these. It's annoying. Like, being able to re-roll some numbers would be nice. I'm gonna go back 10 seconds.
Out unusual ways to make them complement each other to create teams which are more powerful than you'd expect. This was the type of complexity I was hoping for after reaching the endgame content, since it's the kind of thing which captures my imagination and gets me thinking about the game even when I'm doing anything else. Sadly,
Spectra Rover support. Hell yeah. Using my Spectra Rover support in like middle tower TOA is like really kind of interesting.
I've never felt it was really there in Wuwa. Swapping characters out for different options has only minor effects on how the team works, and any synergies and trade-offs when building teams are fairly surface level.
I don't think I agree with that. I'm trying to process my thoughts on what she just said. That swapping out characters for other characters has no real effect on, like, team complexity? Team synergy? I feel like that just couldn't be further from the truth. I don't know if I'm wrong, but, like, that sounds kind of wild to say. Like, yeah, let me just swap out my Showkeeper for Sanhua.
Each DPS has a very limited list of ideal team members. For example, they might specifically need coordinated attacks or someone who charges Forte quickly, and there's not much scope for variety within those roles. It's certainly possible.
I mean, the game's not even a year old, right? Like, yes, you match up the DPS to what support would make sense for them, right? Like Camellia is someone who likes a lot of basic attack buffs, so pairing her with someone like Sanhua makes sense. Right? Pairing her with Sanhua makes sense. But I think it's also because we don't have a huge roster of characters. And it also brings me to one of my concerns about Wuwa, is that they're taking the Honkai approach of having 2 characters per patch, rather than like Genshin does 1 usually. Well, not recently, but they usually did like 1 per patch. But Wuwa's running 2 per patch. So we're gonna end up with a lot. Although the patch cycles are longer, a tiny bit, like what, 1 week longer, something like that. But yeah, we're gonna have a lot. We're gonna have a lot of Woowa characters eventually.
That I'm just missing something, but after months of playing daily, despite enjoying the mechanical complexity in the moment, the lack of team complexity meant that the combat just didn't capture my imagination in the way that I had hoped for. And when it comes to the endgame content, I again have mixed feelings. I dislike the Tower of Adversity overall, time challenges are rarely my cup of tea, and the bar is set too high for me to enjoy it. The two normal
I feel these days, my take on TOA is that I don't think it's like that hard. It's just the case of if your characters are built enough, you could absolutely do TOA. Like I could do TOA with actual mid characters. I feel it's fine. I can understand though entirely if people say it's boring, because I think TOE is kind of boring. Sorry, I do think it's boring. But yeah.
towers are fun enough that I do them anyway to gain the rewards, but it doesn't feel worth grinding the boss enemies to get familiar with their timing just to be able to get all the stars. After all, I've got so many other things to spend my time on which I actually enjoy. Instead, I end up with somewhere around 22 to...
But like, here's a question though. Like for me, if I like that stuff, if I like doing the bosses, I will just do holograms. I prefer holograms to TOA, right? When I do them for the first time. It's like, what else do you do in these games apart from fight enemies? Like when we really break it down, that's what we're doing, right? We are just fighting bosses. We are just fighting enemies.
24 stars and skip the hazard tower entirely. The tower's vigor system deserves some praise though. You can mix and match different teams on the same floor, go back and swap in something completely different for one floor to free up a character without having to start over, and even share equipment between characters if you really want to. This removes many points of friction which can ruin similar modes in other games for people who enjoy this kind of content, and on balance the tower is probably better overall than my personal dislike for it really conveys. The tactical holograms are a similar story. They're very much a test of your mechanical skill and ability to memorize enemy movesets, a clear example of the kind of content which is just not aimed at me. If you enjoy getting your head smashed in over and over as you learn the perfect timing for an enemy, then you'll probably love them. The Elusive Realm, on the other hand, I absolutely love. It's the only endgame in any—
I also really like Elusive Realm. It's my favorite endgame mode. It is. I like the roguelite aspect of it. I do. I do think it is the most fun endgame mode in WoW.
A similar game that I happily spend time replaying just for fun, even after collecting all the important rewards. It really leans into the strengths of WoW's combat systems, sprinkles in some player choice and differentiated reward systems, and builds up to a finale where your character feels incredibly powerful even though you're fighting massively overpowered bosses. My only real complaint with the Elusive Realm is that it's not always available. It's been missing entirely in the week or two since I re-downloaded the game, and I sorely miss it.
I miss it too! I need it in 2.1. Please, in a live stream tomorrow, announce the Elusive Realm. Please, 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 please. I think it'll be great.
When it comes to combat, version 2 generally brings more of the same. More characters, more weapons, more echo sets, more enemies. I enjoyed many of the new combat challenges scattered around the overworld, and the Nightmare Echoes are a cool way to add new options to older characters. On balance, it's pretty great, and if you're in the target audience, then there's a ton of depth within the areas it's aiming to get right to keep it engaging for a long time. But sadly, I prefer an emphasis on other types of complexity, so while it's still fun, it's not quite enough to really capture my imagination. A game which gets both right would be the dream for me, but sadly I've yet to find one which manages that. And I really wish they would keep the Elusive Realm available. It's by far and away the standout in the game for me.
They need to keep it like they keep Simulated Universe. Honestly, I know a lot of people don't like Simulated Universe in Honkai Star Rail, but I feel like having like the different worlds, the different complexities, having the bosses at the end, I feel that they need to buff Elusive Realm. Give more modes, give more options, give more like of the boss varieties. I genuinely think it would make it so much fun. Like that's the thing a lot of gachas are missing, is repeatable good content you could do infinitely. Like, that is, I think, a lot of the thing people want. They want repeatable, good content. Why is, like, any live service game popular? Fortnite, Apex. Why people play it? Because you do the same thing over and over again and it's still fun. And there's a PvP aspect to it. Do you know what I mean? So, make a fun roguelite that is repeatable, that people can consistently do, and it's fun. SU is good. Who even hates that? A lot of people, because it can get boring. Elusive Realm is the best roguelike mode in any gacha game I've played. Yeah, it's good. It's really good.
High hopes for WASN's story. I love sci-fi, and post-apocalyptic setting can be incredibly interesting. I'd heard that Kuro's other games had had rough starts, but improved a ton over time, so I was hoping, with all that experience, they could maybe be able to start strong this time and get even better from there. The cinematics really sold me on this. They are absolutely stunning, and really raised the bar for what to expect from a game like this.
Yes!
And interesting, the cinematography and character animation outside of the cinematics was top tier too. I often found myself thinking we had transitioned into a cutscene when actually it was just some deftly executed camera work within the game engine itself.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
cinematics
this was
are pretty
all
good.
style over substance, and the story became a major reason for me quitting the game. The narrative never hooked me in, the characters never caught my eye, and the conversations just washed past me and never stuck in my memory. From the get-go, the Rover's treatment by the other characters was just not my cup of tea. It felt like they had some inexplicable magnetism, which took so much
Oh, Rover! You're my silly little PogChamp, Rover!
precedence over the rest of the characters.
That's how it feels. That's how Wuwa feels. Oh, you're my silly little PogChamp, Rover!
Personalities that they came across as hollow. As the story progressed, this got more and more pronounced, and the female leads in particular went from inexplicably trusting to inexplicably infatuated with the Rover.
There's a guy on Reddit who fully explains it. That tells me every reason why I don't care. A guy explaining on Reddit why the MC glazing is what. Nah, don't care. Opinion denied.
Every step along the way,
Reddit! Opinion denied.
it just felt like
I hear that in Saints chat too often. Sorry.
it was emphasizing that I was not the target audience. And before anyone who loved this aspect gets upset, let's make it clear, I do not expect every game to be tailored to my tastes. I've got Infinity Nikki for that. But when people ask me what made me lose interest in the game I had previously been super excited about, it's important to be honest. The perfect example of this was Camellia. I loved her design from the moment we first caught a glimpse of her and waited impatiently for her to come out since day one. But when she did come out, after pulling for her, I watched her story through another player's stream and basically uninstalled the game. Okay, not-
Whoa! No! I thought Camellia's story was actually kind of alright. I preferred it to Shorekeepers.
actually because of that, but it was another source of disappointment that finally tipped the scales. Maybe some people loved it, and maybe it's my own fault for having different expectations for what her character might be like, but turning her into just another Rover simp slightly soiled her for me.
I mean, I feel like Camellia being a Rover glazer was just obvious. Like, this is no other way they could have taken it from the start, right? Like, from our first interaction with her, we just know that's what we were gonna get. Like, I think we just knew, okay, that's the kind, like, we already knew what she was like from the first 10 seconds we met her.
Me. Camellia is still my favorite, and I like playing her, but her characterization just completely severed any emotional connection I felt towards her. My experience with her is a more extreme example of how almost all the characters came across to me, and since they didn't
I think Carlotta is still my favorite, though. Yeah, I think Carlotta's still my favorite, because it feels very, like, tactful. It's nice.
capture my attention, I had no investment in the story, and I felt no urge to pull. The rare exception is Alto, which is why I play him a lot, but the rest just left me uninterested. Over time, the character designs seem to be getting progressively more fan-servicey, and the lack of male characters has caused some discussions on Reddit.
Give me more dudes! Kuro! I need bread in my... I'm about to say bread in my pants, but that's not what I meant to say. I meant to say in my hands. But you know what? In my pants works too, I guess.
All of this isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it does emphasize that I might not be the target audience of the game, which is always a little disappointing when there's so much of it which feels so close to being exactly what I'd want. All of this left me less and less interested in the story over time. After trying my best for the first few patches, I have to admit I ended up using the skip button. And this experience proved
Geshu Lin looks like a fucking NPC and you can't change my mind.
to me just how bad a skip button can be for these games. It's something people often cry out for when it's missing or praise it when it's available. As someone who has serious complaints about the slop dialogue prevalent in gacha games, I was firmly on the side of people who are in favor of this feature. However, after my experience with Wuwa, I'm no longer quite so sure. Once you start pressing skip, it's hard to recapture any level of investment in the plot. After all, you don't really know what's going on anymore, and if you're not invested in—
Well, that's why there's a skip button. Because obviously, if you skip, and you're like, oh, I skipped and now I've lost context, that's kind of your fault, right? You just don't skip. Right? It's like, yes, you skipped the story. What do you expect? Do you expect to understand everything? You literally, what do you mean? I don't understand this. What do you mean? You just don't skip.
In the plot, you'll never get to know the characters. Even if you enjoy other aspects of the game, lacking any connection to the characters
It tells you context too.
in a gacha game really sucks any sense of purpose in playing. In Wuwa's case, that didn't feel like much of a loss for me due to the problems I just mentioned, but it still contributed to the game feeling hollow to me. After all, what's a story game if you don't keep up with the story? I heard rave reviews of Rinascita's story, but was—
Yeah, then you'd be like someone like a Toma, right? You become a Toma who skips all story and all gachas. Bro, he's a tourist, man. I hate to say it.
very apprehensive about it. Many people enjoyed parts of the earlier story which I had just bounced right off. Even so, I resolved to avoid the skip button and give it my full attention in the hopes that it would finally capture some storytelling magic. Rinascita's story is a noticeable improvement on all counts, with much improved storytelling and pacing, and it's particularly welcome to see the characters interact.
The only bad pacing is Act 2. Going from Lorelei to the bank. After the bank, it got like really, really good. Right, but the Lorelei stuff to the back, there's a bit of an odd timing between everything. Talking to everyone, doing the lot. I think that was the only time where pacing wasn't like 100%. Apart from that, though, 1, 2, 3, pretty strong. Especially Act 3 was really good. Act 3 was really good. I liked it a lot.
With one another rather than being entirely focused on the rover. However, I'm still a little underwhelmed. It's not bad, and I appreciate the leap in quality, but despite that, it still failed to get me invested in anything that was happening and ended up feeling like a—
Okay, I don't know how you could end up at the end of Act 3 and not feel invested. Because, like, I left Rinascita with more questions than, like, answers. Like, I feel like so eager. I wanted to talk about it. Like, finally we have lore we could discuss. We could theory craft lore. Like, there are so many things in Rinascita that we could talk about. How could you not feel invested? That's interesting. That you came away from Rinascita and felt like you don't care that much. That's interesting. Is the story like... Okay, is the story of Rinascita right now, like, truly gripping and exciting? Right? No, I think it's fine. I think it's pretty good. But, like, I think the exciting thing is, like, we're really getting into it. We have these questions we need answering. That's what I find good, right? And then we can really get into it. And I hope they deliver. I hope they deliver on that.
a bit of a slog towards the end. If version 1 was a 2 out of 10 for me, and I was hoping for an 8 out of 10, I'd maybe give Rinascita a solid 6. It may be that this is because Carlotta echoed the issues I had in the earlier chapters, or because I still don't particularly like any of the character designs, so I'll still hold out hope that later chapters will really suck me in. While Carlotta stands out since she was center stage for so much of the story so far, the same is true for the other characters. We didn't get to know all that much about Zani, Brandt, Rocha, or even Phoebe, for example, and I still don't feel much of a connection.
I do have a problem with Rocha, right? Her companion story was dog shit. Carlotta's was pretty mid until the second half, and then it got good. I don't really care much about Phoebe at all. The 2.0 failed to get me hooked on her character, that's fair. Brandt, I feel like we'll see more of in 2.1. I feel like we'll see more of both Brandt and Phoebe in 2.1, right? Hopefully. That'll be good. That'd be good. And Zani, she'll have a moment, but everyone already likes her a lot.
Connection to any of them. I do actually like Brandt though, so perhaps if he's more central in the upcoming patch.
Of course, woman says man good. I'm just joking around. I sympathize.
It'll start working a
You said you like Rochia's? No, I didn't. I said it was fine, but I said Rochia's companion quest felt more like a side quest to Rinascita and not like her companion quest. So in that aspect, it's not a great companion quest. I'm pretty sure I said that.
little better for me. The setup also appears very black and white, despite the Montellis having such mafia vibes. Maybe that's just because we're early on in the arc and we'll see more of morally grey narrative emerge over time. Many people will argue that it's unfair to have high expectations of a gacha game's narrative. I wholeheartedly disagree, but that's a discussion best left for another time. Overall, Wuthering Waves is a game I keep wanting to enjoy a lot. I waited for it for a long time, and so much of it feels like it's right up my alley. But I always
date with Rochia? Okay, now you're just trolling.
Find myself doubting whether it's actually for me. Many of the parts which don't appeal to me are objectively done really well, the combat's mechanical complexity being the perfect example, and some of the other decisions are likely perfectly tuned to appeal to a different audience. I still hold out hope that Wuwa will broaden its appeal just a little bit, since if it does, then it could be such a blast for people like me. Unless it does, while it comes close, it doesn't quite land. Until next time.
Well, that was an interesting video. Oops. That was a really interesting video. Honestly, I know a lot of this is preference and opinion. So that's why I'm not like digging into this too much or on her, because it's her take and she's fine. I'm just giving my opinion on the opinion and the objectiveness of it, right? I think this is a really nice video that sparks a lot of interesting conversations to have. I think she does make a lot of valid points when it comes to some of these systems and mechanics. So talking like purely on a game standard, but I think when we hold it up and we say as a live service game doesn't matter, I think my opinion changes a bit. Like the whole like traversal thing, the exploration stuff, the way that the worlds are built. Because I know we all say, oh, we should treat gacha games like AAA games. Well, I do agree with that. I think, you know, the way that they're built and they're made is still different, and our expectations should be different for them. Although I would like games to continue to develop and get good and give us a lot of that single player experience that we kind of want into these live service open world gachas. And I think overall people would feel a lot better with them. So she made a lot of really interesting points. We had some good discussions about it. I don't agree with everything, but good conversations to have. So for that reason, and she presented her points very politely. So I like this. This is a nice video, nice react video to me. Her last point doesn't make sense to me about knowing the characters 2.0, because it's just the introduction. We'll see more of the characters. Yeah, no, I agree. Like I said, I left 2.0 with more questions than answers, and I'm excited to see more. And I hope... Do you know what I don't want? One of the issues that I had with 1.0 Wuwa is we meet people like Alto, and then we never hear from them again, even though we go back to the Black Shores. We meet him for like 2 minutes, and then he goes to the cuck chair while we fuck Shorekeeper, right? I don't want that happening in Rinascita. Suddenly, we don't care about Carlotta now that we go to 2.1. Suddenly, we don't care about like Zani until like 2.3. Like, I don't want that happening, right? I don't want that to happen. But we think, oh, we're gonna get more in depth with these characters, and then we don't. That'll be really disappointing. That'll be very disappointing. Do you know what I mean? So I hope we go more in depth, and we'll see. And hey, 2.1 live stream is tomorrow. That's gonna be fun. That's gonna be hella fun. Anyway, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. And I'll see y'all on the next one. I'm live every day. Twitch.tv Cabinetz. Link is in the pinned comment. I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.